The warm afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Bean and Brew, a cozy coffee shop nestled in the heart of downtown San Francisco. Sarah Chen wiped down the counter for the 100th time that day, a habit she had developed over the 5 years since opening her beloved cafe. The sweet aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air, mixing with the scent of warm pastries from the display case. At 28, Sarah had built her business from scratch, turning it into one of the neighborhood's most popular meeting spots. The walls were decorated with local artwork, and comfortable chairs invited customers to stay and relax. But what made Bean and Brew truly special was its atmosphere of peace and respect. "Another oat milk latte, please," called out a regular customer, typing away on her laptop. Sarah smiled and nodded to Marcus, her newest barista, to handle the order. At just 22, Marcus had proven himself to be reliable and professional, exactly what the busy coffee shop needed. The clock on the wall showed 4:30 p.m., usually a quieter time between the afternoon rush and evening crowd. Sarah used these moments to check inventory and plan for the next day, but today would be different. Very different. The bell above the door chimed. Sarah looked up, ready to greet another customer with her usual warm smile. Her eyes widened slightly as she recognized the tall figure who had just walked in. Even as she hadn't seen him countless times on TV and social media, his face was impossible to miss. Elon Musk, one of the world's most famous and controversial businessmen. He wore simple jeans and a black t-shirt, but it was his hat that immediately caught Sarah's attention. The bright red cap displayed a political message that had caused heated arguments in her shop before. 6 months earlier, she had implemented a strict no political messaging policy after two customers nearly came to blows over their different views. The policy was clearly posted on the door and at the counter. It applied to everything: hats, shirts, buttons, even laptop stickers. Sarah had lost some customers because of it, but she had gained many more who appreciated having a neutral space where they could enjoy their coffee in peace. Marcus was at the register, and Sarah could see him tense up as he recognized both the customer and the situation. Other customers began to notice too. The quiet tapping of laptop keys stopped. Phones appeared in hands, ready to record whatever might happen next. Musk stepped up to the counter, seemingly unaware of the attention he was drawing. "Could I get a triple shot espresso?" he asked, pulling out his phone. Marcus glanced at Sarah, who gave him a small nod. They had discussed this scenario during training. It didn't matter who the customer was, the rules applied to everyone equally. "Sir," Marcus began politely, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness, "I apologize, but we have a strict no political messaging policy in our cafe. I'd be happy to serve you, but I'll need to ask you to remove or change the hat first." The cafe fell completely silent. Someone's spoon clinked against their cup, the sound echoing in the quiet space. Sarah held her breath, her hand gripping the cleaning cloth tightly. Musk looked up from his phone, surprised. His eyes moved from Marcus to the policy sign on the counter, then to Sarah's name tag. For a moment, no one moved. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Several customers had their phones out now, recording the interaction. Sarah knew that whatever happened next would likely be all over social media within hours. Her small coffee shop could become the center of a viral storm, for better or worse. She thought about stepping in, maybe making an exception just this once. After all, this was Elon Musk, a man who could probably buy her entire block without blinking. But then she remembered why she had made the policy in the first place. She remembered the elderly couple who had thanked her for creating a space where they could enjoy their morning coffee without feeling anxious about politics. She remembered the study groups from the nearby college who chose her shop because they knew they could focus on their work without distractions. The next few seconds would determine more than just a coffee sale. They would test whether Sarah's principles were truly equal for everyone, even one of the richest men in the world. Elon Musk stood at the counter of Bean and Brew, his fingers still resting on his phone. The afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed to pause with everyone else, waiting to see what would happen next. A young woman at a corner table had forgotten about her cooling latte, her phone held high to record the scene. Marcus, the young barista, fought the urge to look down. His hands were slightly shaky, but his voice remained steady. "Sir, I can get your espresso ready right away once you comply with our policy." He gestured politely to the sign that clearly stated the rules. Musk's expression changed from surprise to curiosity. He reached up and touched the brim of his hat, as if just remembering he was wearing it. "Interesting," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the silent cafe. "Most places don't enforce these kinds of rules when they recognize me." Sarah took a step forward, ready to support her employee if needed. She noticed how Marcus stood straighter, his shoulders back, showing a confidence she hadn't seen in him before. This was the moment that would define not just their day, but possibly the future of her small business. "That's exactly why we have to enforce it, sir," Marcus replied, surprising everyone with his calm response. "Our policy exists to make sure everyone feels welcome here, regardless of who they are or what they believe. It wouldn't mean anything if we made exceptions." A businessman in a suit, sitting near the counter, nodded in agreement. Others in the cafe seemed to relax slightly, appreciating the professional way Marcus was handling the situation. Musk glanced around the room, taking in the diverse crowd of customers. There were students with textbooks spread out on tables, professionals having quiet meetings, and elderly regulars solving crossword puzzles. None of them displayed any political messages. "You do realize," Musk said, leaning slightly on the counter, "that refusing service to me could cause quite a stir. I have quite a few followers who might not appreciate it." His tone wasn't threatening, but rather seemed genuinely curious about their reaction. Sarah's heart raced, but she stepped forward to stand beside Marcus. "We understand that, Mr. Musk," she said quietly, "but this safe space we've created means everything to our community. We'd rather face internet drama than break our promise to our customers." The tension in the room shifted. Some customers began to whisper to each other, and more phones appeared to record the interaction. A tweet about the situation had already gone viral, and curious onlookers were beginning to gather outside the shop's windows. Musk's fingers moved across his phone screen. Sarah wondered if he was already posting about them, imagining the flood of angry comments that might follow. The small coffee shop's social media accounts would probably crash from the sudden attention. But instead of posting anything, Musk surprised them by putting his phone away. He looked directly at Sarah, then at Marcus, studying their faces. "You know," he said, "it's not often that someone stands up to me like this. Usually, people either get angry or start apologizing immediately." Marcus remained steady. "We're not standing up to you, sir. We're standing up for our principles. There's a difference." A small smile appeared at the corner of Musk's mouth. The cafe remained silent, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Outside, more people had gathered, pressing their faces against the windows. News was spreading fast. Sarah noticed a few news vans pulling up outside. This story was about to get bigger than she had ever imagined. Her small coffee shop policy was about to become national news, and she wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Musk reached for his hat, and everyone in the cafe held their breath. But instead of removing it, he adjusted it slightly. "Well," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silence, "I think this situation deserves more than just a quick decision. I'll need some time to think about this." Without ordering his espresso, he turned and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he paused and looked back at Sarah and Marcus. "I'll be seeing you again," he said, his tone unreadable. "Very soon." As the door closed behind him, the cafe erupted in excited chatter. Outside, reporters were already setting up their cameras. Sarah and Marcus exchanged worried looks, knowing that their normal day had just turned into something that would change their lives forever. The moment Elon Musk left Bean and Brew, chaos erupted both inside and outside the coffee shop. Sarah watched through the window as he walked to his waiting Tesla, surrounded by a growing crowd of people holding up their phones. Some were already live streaming, their excited voices carrying through the glass. Elon Musk was just refused service. Inside the cafe, customers were talking all at once. The quiet coffee shop had transformed into a buzzing hive of excitement. Sarah heard fragments of conversations from every direction. "Did you get it all on video? I can't believe they actually stood up to him. This is going to be everywhere in an hour." Marcus stood at the counter, still looking a bit pale but holding his ground. An elderly regular customer walked up and patted his hand. "You did the right thing, young man," she said warmly. "It's nice to see someone stick to their principles." But not everyone was supportive. A man in a business suit approached Sarah, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" he asked, his voice sharp with criticism. He could destroy your business with one tweet. Was it really worth it over a hat? Sarah felt her stomach tighten. The man's words echoed her own fears, but she forced herself to remain calm. Yes, she replied firmly. It was worth it. Our rules apply to everyone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, then buzzed again, and again. She pulled it out to find hundreds of notifications pouring in. The coffee shop's social media accounts were exploding with activity. Someone had posted a video of the interaction, and it was spreading like wildfire. Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. They ranged from passionate support to angry threats of boycotts. Some people were calling the cafe brave, while others were calling for it to be shut down. The hashtag Bean and Brew was trending, and their follower count was skyrocketing. Outside, news vans were double parking on the street. Reporters were setting up their cameras, preparing for live broadcasts. Sarah could see their lips moving as they practiced their opening lines. In an unprecedented show of principle, a small San Francisco coffee shop has denied service to the world's richest man. Marcus approached Sarah, his face worried. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "Maybe I should have handled it differently. I didn't mean to cause all this trouble." Sarah shook her head and put a hand on his shoulder. "No, Marcus. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. We can handle whatever comes next." But even as she said the words, she wasn't sure she believed them. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her sister calling. "Sarah, have you seen Twitter? Elon just posted about your shop." Sarah's heart stopped. With shaking fingers, she opened Twitter and found Musk's latest post. Her eyes scanned the words, trying to make sense of them. "Interesting experience at a SF coffee shop today. Respect for standing firm on their principles. More to come." The post was deliberately vague, leaving room for interpretation. Already, thousands of replies were pouring in, with people debating what more to come might mean. Was it a threat? A promise? Something else entirely? Through the window, Sarah could see more people gathering outside. Some were holding signs supporting the shop, while others were clearly there to protest. A few were even wearing the same hat Musk had been wearing, deliberately testing whether the shop would refuse them service too. Marcus looked at Sarah questioningly. She nodded, and he politely but firmly turned away anyone wearing political messages, regardless of what side they represented. Each time, more phones recorded the interactions, adding fuel to the viral fire. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, Sarah realized that her small coffee shop had become something much bigger than herself. It was now a symbol in a larger debate about principles, power, and standing up for what you believe in. She locked herself in the back office for a moment, took a deep breath, and called her lawyer. Whatever was coming next, she needed to be prepared. Musk's words, "I'll be seeing you again," echoed in her mind. Tomorrow would bring either disaster or opportunity, and she had no way of knowing which. Night had fallen over San Francisco, but Bean and Brew's small office remained lit. Sarah sat alone at her desk, staring at her computer screen. The clock showed 11:45 p.m., nearly 6 hours after they closed early due to the chaos outside, but sleep felt impossible. Her laptop displayed dozens of open tabs, news articles, social media posts, and email messages, all about what people were now calling the Musk incident. The story had exploded beyond anything she could have imagined. Even major news networks were covering it. Small coffee shop takes stand against world's richest man. Principles over profit. The Bean and Brew story. Twitter divided over coffee shop's stand. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus, who couldn't sleep either. "Just saw we're up to 500,000 followers. Yesterday we had 1,200. This is crazy." She typed back, "Try to get some rest. Tomorrow might be even crazier." But rest seemed impossible. Her mind kept replaying moments from the day. The way Musk had looked at her before leaving. His cryptic tweet. The flood of responses that followed. Some people were calling them heroes. Others were calling them fools. Her email inbox was overwhelming. Interview requests from TV shows. Messages of support from other small business owners. Angry letters from Musk's supporters. Job offers for Marcus from bigger companies, praising his principles. And most worryingly, messages from people threatening to protest outside the shop tomorrow. Sarah opened her business accounts. Online orders for Bean and Brew merchandise had skyrocketed. People wanted to show their support. But she also saw dozens of one-star reviews from people who had never visited the shop. The internet had turned her small cafe into a battlefield. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Honey, are you still at the shop? You need to come home and rest." "I can't, Mom," Sarah replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "I need to figure out how to handle tomorrow. What if he really comes back? What if protesters show up? What if? What if everything works out fine?" Her mother interrupted gently. "You did the right thing. That's what matters." After hanging up, Sarah walked into the dark cafe. Moonlight filtered through the windows, illuminating the empty chairs and tables. Just yesterday, this had been a simple coffee shop. Now it felt like the eye of a storm. She checked social media one more time. Hashtag Bean and Brew was still trending. People were debating much more than just their policy now. They were talking about equality, principles, and standing up to power. Someone had made a meme of Marcus saying, "Our policy exists to make sure everyone feels welcome here," and it had gone viral. Her lawyer had left 3 voicemails with advice about handling the media. Her insurance company wanted to discuss security measures. Even her landlord had called, nervous about the attention, but also excited about the publicity. At midnight, Sarah finally forced herself to leave the shop. As she locked up, she noticed someone had taped a handwritten note to the door. "Thank you for keeping this place safe for everyone. See you tomorrow for my usual morning coffee. Linda, Wednesday crossword lady." The simple message brought tears to her eyes. This was why they had the policy in the first place, for their regular customers who just wanted a peaceful place to enjoy their coffee. Walking to her car, Sarah passed a news van already parked for the morning. The reporter was sleeping inside, determined to be first on scene. In a nearby alley, she spotted 2 teenagers practicing with their phones. "Hey guys, like and subscribe. We're here at Bean and Brew where tomorrow." Sarah drove home through the quiet streets of San Francisco, her mind racing. Tomorrow would change everything. She just didn't know how. Would Musk return? Would the shop become a target? Would their stance destroy everything she built, or make it stronger? As she finally crawled into bed at 1 a.m., her phone buzzed one last time. It was a message from Marcus. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of what we did. See you in the morning, boss." Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. At least she wasn't facing this alone. Then, just as she was about to fall asleep, her phone lit up with a new notification. Elon Musk had just posted again. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight and chaos. By 6 a.m., Bean and Brew was surrounded by news vans, reporters, and a growing crowd of onlookers. Sarah had arrived extra early, slipping in through the back door at 5:30 a.m. to avoid the cameras. Musk's late-night tweet had only added to the excitement. "Morning coffee is important. See you at Bean and Brew tomorrow. No hat this time. Let's talk." Marcus arrived through the back door at 6:15 a.m., looking nervous but determined. "I saw 3 different news channels out there," he said, tying on his apron, "and there's already a line forming." Sarah nodded, checking their coffee supplies for the 10th time. "Remember, we treat everyone exactly the same today. No political messages, no exceptions, and no special treatment, even for him." Their other employees had all showed up early too, drawn by the excitement and wanting to support the shop. Linda, the regular crossword customer, had somehow managed to slip through the crowd and claim her usual table. "I'm not missing this for anything," she announced, settling in with her puzzle. At exactly 7 a.m., Sarah unlocked the front door. The crowd outside parted as their first customers of the day entered. Mostly regulars who were determined to show their support, mixed with curious newcomers and social media influencers live streaming everything. The morning passed in a blur of coffee orders and clicking cameras. Every time the door opened, heads turned, wondering if it was him. News reporters did live broadcasts from outside, interviewing customers as they left. "The coffee is great," one regular told the camera, "but we come here for the principles." At 10:23 a.m., a sleek Tesla pulled up outside. The crowd's excitement surged as Elon Musk stepped out, wearing simple jeans and a plain black t-shirt, no hat in sight. Camera flashes lit up the street as he walked toward the door. Inside, Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "Just like any other customer, she reminded her staff. Marcus nodded, taking his position at the register. The bell above the door chimed as Musk entered. The cafe fell silent except for the whirring of the coffee machines and the clicking of cameras. He walked directly to the counter, a slight smile on his face. "Good morning," Marcus said professionally. "Welcome to Bean and Brew." "Good morning," Musk replied, then looked around the cafe. His eyes landed on Sarah. "Actually, I was hoping to speak with the owner." Sarah stepped forward, trying to keep her hands from shaking. "I'm Sarah Chen. Welcome to our shop, Mr. Musk." "Please call me Elon," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet cafe. "Would you mind if we talked for a few minutes? I brought something I'd like to show you." He held up a tablet, its screen dark. Outside, the crowd pressed against the windows, trying to see what was happening. Live streams captured every moment as Sarah nodded and gestured to a quiet corner table. As they sat down, Musk placed the tablet on the table between them. Linda pretended to focus on her crossword puzzle nearby, but her pen hadn't moved in minutes. Marcus watched from behind the counter while continuing to serve other customers. "First," Musk said, "I'd like to apologize for any trouble I may have caused yesterday, but I have to admit, what happened here fascinated me." He turned on the tablet, revealing what looked like business charts and graphs. Sarah's breath caught as she saw the title at the top of the screen: Project Civility, a new approach to public discourse. "You see," Musk continued, his voice dropping lower so only Sarah could hear, "what happened yesterday got me thinking, and I believe your small coffee shop might be the perfect place to start something revolutionary." Outside, the crowd grew larger. Inside, Sarah leaned forward to look at the tablet, unaware that this conversation was about to change not just her coffee shop, but possibly the way people approach difficult conversations across the country. Sarah stared at the tablet screen as Elon Musk swiped through his presentation. Each slide revealed more details of his unexpected proposal, and with each passing moment, her eyes grew wider. "You want to use Bean and Brew as a test site for a new kind of public forum?" she asked, making sure she understood correctly. Musk nodded, zooming in on a blueprint. "Your no political messages policy got me thinking. Most coffee shops claim to be gathering places, but they don't actually do anything to make real conversation possible. You're different. You've already created a neutral space." Outside, photographers pressed against the windows, their cameras clicking rapidly. Inside, customers pretended not to listen while obviously straining to hear every word. Marcus kept the coffee flowing, but his eyes frequently darted to their corner. "The problem with social media," Musk continued, "is that it rewards conflict. People shout at each other but never listen. But here," he gestured around the cafe, "here, you've created something rare, a place where people feel safe enough to lower their guards." Sarah watched as he pulled up statistics on his tablet. "Did you know that your regular customers include people from completely opposite ends of the political spectrum? Yet they sit here together, drink coffee, and sometimes even chat. That's remarkable in today's world." Linda, still pretending to do her crossword, smiled slightly. She'd been sharing her table with a businessman who held very different views for months now. They'd even started helping each other with puzzle clues. "But what exactly are you proposing?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Musk's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "A series of structured dialogue events. We provide the framework, training, and technology. You provide the space and the atmosphere you've already perfected. People from different backgrounds come together, not to debate, but to understand." He showed her designs for subtle additions to the cafe, small signs with conversation prompts, comfortable seating arrangements designed to encourage dialogue, and an innovative app that would help guide discussions without inflaming tensions. "The goal isn't to change minds," he explained. "It's to change how people talk to each other. And after yesterday, I realized this might be the perfect place to start." Sarah's mind raced. "But why us? Why not start this at a bigger chain, or create your own cafes?" Musk smiled. "Because you and Marcus proved something yesterday. When you stood up to me, politely but firmly, you showed that principles matter more than power. That's exactly the foundation we need." He pulled up another slide showing potential outcomes. "If this works here, we could create a model for other businesses. Imagine a network of places across the country where people could practice having difficult conversations respectfully." Sarah thought about her regular customers, The college students, the business people, the retirees. They all came here to feel comfortable, to escape the constant arguing they found elsewhere. What about our current atmosphere? She asked. We've worked hard to make this a peaceful place. I don't want to turn it into a debate club. That's exactly why this would work, Musk replied earnestly. We're not trying to create more debate. We're trying to create more understanding. Your policy already shows people how to respect boundaries. We just want to help them take the next step. Through the window, Sarah could see the crowd outside growing larger. News helicopters circled overhead. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Everything about her small coffee shop had changed in just 24 hours. There's no pressure to decide right now, Musk said gently, noticing her thoughtful expression. But I believe what happened yesterday wasn't just about a hat. It was about showing that there's still a place for civility in our world. And maybe, just maybe, we can build on that. He handed her a business card with a private number. Think about it. Talk to your team. This could be the beginning of something important. Sarah held the card, feeling its weight in her hand. Behind the counter, Marcus watched with curious eyes. Linda had finally given up pretending to do her crossword. And outside, the world waited to see what would happen next at the little coffee shop that dared to stand up for its principles. After Musk left Bean and Brew, Sarah gathered her entire staff in the back room. The cafe was still buzzing with excitement, but she needed to make this decision together with her team. Marcus stood near the door, while other employees found spots to sit among the coffee supplies and storage shelves. Before I tell you about his proposal, Sarah said, I want to hear what you think. Should we even consider working with him? Lisa, the weekend barista, spoke first. Did you see the crowd out there? We're already part of something bigger than ourselves. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Yesterday, I was worried I'd made a huge mistake. Now I'm thinking maybe it was exactly right. Sarah pulled out the tablet Musk had left behind for them to review his proposal. As she showed them the plans, their expressions changed from curiosity to genuine excitement. The proposal was both simpler and more ambitious than anyone expected. Bean and Brew would become the pilot location for what Musk called Project Civility. They would host structured conversation events where people with different viewpoints could practice real dialogue. He's not asking us to change who we are, Sarah explained. He wants to build on what we've already created. The staff discussed the ideas for over an hour. They talked about practical concerns, like handling larger crowds and maintaining their peaceful atmosphere. They worried about losing regular customers or becoming too focused on the program. But they also saw the potential. They could help people learn to talk to each other again, really talk, not just argue. That evening, Sarah called the private number Musk had given her. We're in, she said, but we have some conditions. Musk listened as Sarah laid out their requirements. The cafe's original atmosphere had to be protected. Regular customers would always have their usual spots. The no political messages policy would stay strictly in place, and most importantly, the staff would have final say on how the program was implemented. Those aren't just conditions, Musk replied, sounding pleased. Those are exactly why this will work. Over the next few weeks, Bean and Brew underwent subtle changes. New, comfortable seating areas were added, designed for small group conversations. Simple cards appeared on tables with gentle conversation prompts. Staff members received special training in facilitating respectful discussions. The first official dialogue event was small, just 10 people from different backgrounds, sitting together over coffee. Sarah watched nervously as a former tech executive and a local artist discovered they shared concerns about their children's education. A college student and a retiree found common ground discussing their favorite books. Word spread quickly. More people signed up for future sessions. Regular customers started joining in, curious about the conversations they saw happening around them. 1 month into the program, Linda, the crossword lady, brought her puzzle to a dialogue session. You know, she said to Sarah afterward, I've learned more about different viewpoints in the past hour than I have in years of watching the news. The media attention shifted from the initial confrontation to the unexpected transformation. News stories now focused on the unique experiment happening at Bean and Brew. Could coffee shop conversations change how we talk to each other? One headline asked. Other businesses started reaching out, wanting to learn from their experience. Sarah found herself giving interviews about the importance of creating safe spaces for difficult conversations. Musk's investment provided resources, but he stayed largely in the background, letting Bean and Brew maintain its independent character. "This was never about me," he told Sarah during a check-in visit. "It's about proving that real dialogue is still possible." 6 weeks after the confrontation that could have destroyed her business, Sarah stood behind the counter, watching her cafe buzz with activity. Regular customers sipped their usual drinks while dialogue participants engaged in quiet, thoughtful conversations. The atmosphere remained peaceful, but there was something new in the air, a sense of possibility. Marcus appeared beside her, carrying a fresh pot of coffee. "You know what's funny?" he said, smiling. "All this started because we refused to serve the world's richest man a cup of coffee." Sarah laughed. "Sometimes," she replied, "saying no to the wrong thing leads to saying yes to the right thing." 6 months after the famous hat incident, Bean and Brew had become something no one could have predicted. On this sunny morning, Sarah stood at her usual spot behind the counter, watching as her cafe hosted its 100th successful dialogue session. The small coffee shop had transformed, yet somehow stayed exactly the same. The familiar scent of fresh coffee still filled the air, and Linda still worked on her crossword puzzles in her corner. But now, her table had become known as the Bridge Builder's Corner, where she'd often invited dialogue participants to help her with clues, sparking unexpected conversations. Today was special. News crews had returned to cover their milestone event, but this time there was no chaos. Instead, they quietly filmed as people from different walks of life sat together, sharing stories over steaming cups of coffee. Marcus, now promoted to manager, approached a group of newcomers. "Welcome to Bean and Brew," he said warmly. "Would you like to just get coffee, or are you here for the morning dialogue session?" The project's civility program had spread to 50 other coffee shops across the country, but Bean and Brew remained the heart of the movement. Sarah had helped train staff at other locations, teaching them how to balance their regular business with fostering meaningful conversations. "You know what I love most?" Linda said to Sarah during a quiet moment. "The regulars who said they'd leave when this all started? Most of them not only stayed but joined the dialogue sessions. That businessman who always ordered the extra hot latte, he met his new business partner here during a session about local community development. The cafe's success had inspired others. Other businesses had started adopting similar policies, creating their own versions of neutral spaces. A chain of bookstores had started common ground reading circles. A gym had introduced workout and talk sessions where people from different backgrounds exercised together. Elon Musk himself had only visited 3 times since the program started, preferring to let Bean and Brew develop naturally. But his support had never wavered. The project's success had even influenced how he ran his own companies, introducing similar dialogue programs in workplace settings. Sarah's phone buzzed, another coffee shop owner asking for advice about starting their own program. These calls came almost daily now. The idea was spreading, growing beyond what anyone had imagined. 6 months ago, Marcus said, preparing a latte with practiced ease, "I thought I'd ruined everything by enforcing our policy. Now look at us." The cafe had kept its original rules, no political messages allowed, but had become a place where people could talk about their different views respectfully. The policy wasn't about avoiding difficult topics, it was about creating the right environment to discuss them. A young woman approached the counter, tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to thank you," she said to Sarah. "I hadn't spoken to my father for 2 years because of our political differences. We attended your dialogue session last week, and for the first time, we really listened to each other. We're having dinner together tonight." These stories had become common. People would come in angry or hurt, and leave with a better understanding of those they disagreed with. Not everyone changed their minds, but they learned to see each other as human beings first. As the morning sun filled the cafe, Sarah watched a new group settle in for their dialogue session. There was a teacher, a business owner, a construction worker, and a college student. People who might never have spoken to each other otherwise. The wall behind them displayed framed news articles about the cafe, including the original viral story about refusing service to Musk. But the newest edition was different, a simple sign that read, "Welcome to Bean and Brew, where every conversation matters." Linda finished her crossword and called out to Sarah, "Hey, I finally figured out that clue from last week. 7 letters, What happens when people really listen to each other? Sarah smiled, knowing the answer. Changes. Outside, the city was waking up. More customers were arriving, some for coffee, others for conversation, all welcome in this space that had become more than just a cafe. It had become proof that sometimes the smallest stand for principles could lead to the biggest changes. And it all started with a hat.